So, a lot of tension and many rumors regarding Jerome Powell's resignation as the chairman of the Fed, based on the fact that there is a lot of dissonance between the Fed and the Treasury, led by Scott Bessent, and especially with Trump, who wants him out as soon as possible. And May 2026 cannot come any sooner, according to him. So, I'd like to understand a little bit of the movements that are currently happening and why is this such a big deal when you want to understand what happens to liquidity and especially Bitcoin. So first off, this is very interesting. So William Peltz, which is the U.S. Director of Federal Housing, so responsible for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which is basically the governmental program for housing in the United States, and especially mortgages, 30-year mortgages. This is exactly the core of most of the real estate in the United States for home ownership, and he is absolutely pounding onto Powell. So every second tweet or every tweet is literally about Powell. So Jay Powell so Jay Powell says false things, and why? What data is Jerome Powell looking to keep up rates, or he should resign, or it's the patriotic thing to do? So I'm calling for Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell to resign. Literally every single day, he reminds us how important it is, or how patriotic it would be if he just resigned, because he does not want to cut rates. And if you don't want to cut rates, we have to replace you with somebody who actually does. So this is basically Trump's words on that matter, and William Peltz is just pushing for a lot of stuff. That's actually the same person who also pushed legislation to use Bitcoin as collateral for mortgages in the United States. So which is pretty amazing for the community. So, but also it's pretty interesting how he just released something that is extraordinary. So I was surprised by that, to be honest, because not only he tweets about it, but he actually released a U.S. federal housing statement from the chairman of the board, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, William Peltz, on reports that Jerome Powell is considering resigning. So we literally have a press release where William Peltz says, I'm encouraged by reports that Jerome Powell is considering resigning. And I think this will be the right decision for America, and the economy will boom. So and this has had many retweets all over the place, but again, it does not come from Jerome Powell. We don't see Jerome Powell. I don't even think he has a Twitter account or anything like that, or an X account, for us to understand exactly what he's thinking. Is he actually resigning? So we don't really know. But my best guess would be just no, since he wants to have the Fed as independent as possible, and his mandate expires next year by May. So it makes little sense if you want to just maybe go to betting websites like Kalshi, for example, to see what the odds actually are. Actually, it could be a great thing to see if Powell. Let me check Powell resignation. Let me see Powell out as chairman. So if you see here what happens, uh, according to Kaushi, Powell out as chair this year. So right now we have a 17% chance. So I mean, it's low but not negligible. So we have to wait and see, because anything that could be said can change it all of a sudden. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We also discussed. So this is important to see, because let's say for the matter that he just is out for any reason, right? So he will be admitting that he has been pushed out by Trump indirectly, even if he doesn't have the authority to do that. It would be just insurmountable pressure to, for example. But again, my base case is it's not really what he thinks, but it's extremely important to understand why this pressure is happening. Because let's say they do wait until everything is over and he's out. The actual replacement for Powell will be very, very important, because we see more and more a move of a fusion between the two, a merge, a possible merge between the Fed and the Treasury, which is something that most people are not really discussing. In my opinion, that could change a lot of things for liquidity worldwide, because as I say in many other videos, there is no such thing as monetary policy from the Fed, because since we have such a fiscal dominant macroeconomy where it's all about government spending as the true money printer and the true way to create stimulus for the economy, there's nothing really the Fed can do to control inflation based on interest rates. And an even bigger problem is the whole discussion about why he hasn't cut yet, because we still have, for example, a lot of downward pressure into inflation, onto consumer pricing. So if you see here on Truflation, which has a pinpoint of millions of different prices for products, you just see it going down. It's at 1.74% as a leading indicator that the Fed actually should be using if they really want to do something more relevant. So in this case here, prices are not prices are coming down, but inflation, the rate of them going up, is slowing down more and more, especially with housing. And this is exactly the point made by Peltz. So you're going to see this conflict a lot, while the Fed is still discussing the possibility for tariffs to be inflationary, which hasn't been proven by numbers yet. And we have discussed that ad nauseum on our BI reports. And also, we in our latest BI report, we also discussed that tension on how actually the Scott Bessent and the Treasury is the one trying to actually doing monetary policy instead of the Fed, because now the focus is to outgrow the debt. And of course, we have many other things that we discussed so that you can really act on your investments. Maybe you're asking, hey, what should I do about my investments? What can I really do with all that information? So you can see based on our BI report, you can see links on the description below as well for having access to that. But the most important thing as well is to see that liquidity is driven by the yield curve. So this is what really drives liquidity here. So you see how the short-term bonds, what we call T-bills in the United States, are the ones that are really going to be the subject for liquidity. So, and this has nothing to do with the Fed. The Fed controls this part here on the left, so to speak, the overnight, the Fed funds rate as a target. But what really is going to drive it is what the market does with the other bonds and T-bills, which the Fed cannot really control. And especially if now, based on the fact that we have a new issuance coming up of T-bills, since the debt ceiling has been raised by another 5 trillion. We discussed that in detail in our BI report. You're going to see, you may see maybe a raise, maybe a rise on those interest rates. And then what happens then? Is Jerome Powell just saying, oh, I'm going to cut? So this just creates so much confusion, and that dissonance from within the United States is really going to create some interesting turbulence for liquidity. But again, I wouldn't worry too much in what comes to Bitcoin pricing, markets coming down. Everything is just a lot of noise, but because it does not provide clarity. So we have to wait and see on what really happens. But for sure, it's not great to be Jerome Powell at the moment. He really wants to finish off his mandate, but 2026 cannot come soon enough. See you in the next video.